You won't believe this true story of courage and redemption. Rashid woke up early that morning, as he always did. The soft sunlight had just begun to touch the rooftops of his small town, giving the streets a golden glow. Birds chirped in the distance, and the smell of fresh bread from the nearby bakery filled the air. Rashid had always loved these quiet mornings, where everything felt peaceful and ordinary. To him, life had a comforting rhythm: wake up, help his family, go to work, return home, and rest. It was simple, predictable, and safe. He liked it that way. He lived in a modest house with his parents and younger brother, Armin. His father worked as a carpenter, creating beautiful furniture for the people in the town, while his mother took care of the home and sometimes helped with small embroidery projects to earn a little extra money. Rashid had always admired his father's skill and his mother's patience. He had grown up watching them work hard every day, and their example had taught him the value of honesty, kindness, and responsibility. Rashid's life wasn't filled with grand adventures or exciting events. Most days he went to work at a small shop that sold groceries and household items. It wasn't the most glamorous job, but it allowed him to support his family and maintain a steady routine. Despite the simplicity of his life, Rashid had dreams. He wanted to learn new skills, maybe start a small business and provide a better future for Armin. But he also had a quiet fear of failure, fear of taking risks, and fear of stepping out of his comfort zone. He often wondered if he would ever be brave enough to change his life. That morning, Rashid walked to the small shop through the winding streets of his town. He greeted neighbors with a friendly nod or a warm smile. People knew him as a quiet, helpful young man who never caused trouble. Children waved at him as he passed, and the elderly waved back, happy to see him start his day. Rashid enjoyed these small connections. They made him feel part of something larger, a community where people cared for one another. As he reached the shop, Rashid noticed Mr. Ahmed, the shop owner, struggling to lift a heavy sack of rice. Without thinking twice, Rashid rushed to help. "Let me help you with that," he said politely. Together they managed to place the sack on the counter. Mr. Ahmed patted Rashid's shoulder and smiled. "Thank you, my boy, always so kind," he said. Rashid smiled back, feeling a warm sense of satisfaction. Helping others, even in small ways, gave him a sense of purpose. The morning went on like any other. Rashid served customers, restocked shelves, and occasionally helped carry heavy items to people's homes. Everything seemed normal, predictable, and safe. But even in this ordinary routine, Rashid had moments of reflection. He would sometimes look out the window, watching children play in the streets or birds soaring above the rooftops, and wonder what life had in store for him. Deep down, he felt a quiet restlessness, a yearning for something more, something meaningful that would test him in ways he had never imagined. Later that afternoon, as Rashid was closing the shop for a short break, he noticed a commotion outside. People were gathered near the corner of the street, speaking in urgent, worried voices. Curious, Rashid stepped closer. He saw a small boy, no older than 7, who had fallen into an open drain. Water was rushing around him, and the boy was struggling to stay afloat. Rashid's heart raced. Instantly, he felt a surge of fear and hesitation. What if he tried to save the boy and failed? What if he himself got hurt? For a few seconds, Rashid froze. His mind filled with doubts, but then he saw the boy's terrified eyes looking up at him, calling silently for help. Rashid knew he couldn't stand by. Without thinking about the consequences, he jumped into the shallow, muddy water and carefully pulled the boy to safety. The crowd cheered, and Rashid handed the boy to his mother, who hugged him tightly with tears in her eyes. That moment stayed with Rashid. It was the first time he realized that courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about acting despite fear. He returned to the shop, drenched and muddy, but with a strange feeling of pride mixed with humility. Helping someone in need had given him a sense of purpose that no routine task could ever provide. After work, Rashid walked home slowly, thinking about the events of the day. Armin ran to greet him at the gate, excited to share his own small adventures from school. Rashid smiled, ruffled his brother's hair, and listened patiently. But his mind kept wandering back to the boy he had saved. He wondered if there would be other moments where he would be called to act, moments that would test his courage in ways he had never imagined. At home, dinner was a quiet affair. Rashid's father spoke about his day at the workshop, while his mother asked about his customers. Rashid answered politely, but kept his thoughts to himself. He didn't yet realize that the events of today were only a small hint of the challenges that lay ahead. Life was about to change in ways he could never have predicted, and the ordinary mornings he cherished so much would soon be replaced by tests of courage, choices that would define him, and lessons that would shape his character forever. That night, Rashid lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He thought about fear, responsibility, and the quiet courage he had discovered within himself. He thought about the boy and the mother, and about the small ways in which a single action could make a difference in someone's life. As sleep approached, Rashid felt a mixture of peace and anticipation. Something inside him had shifted. For the first time, he felt that he might have the strength to face challenges he had previously avoided. The following days were calm, but filled with small reminders of the incident. People in the town greeted Rashid differently now, some with admiration, others with curiosity. Children whispered stories of how Rashid had saved the boy, and even strangers would nod at him in the street. Rashid appreciated their respect, but he also felt the weight of responsibility. Courage, he realized, was not just a one-time act. It was a quality that had to be nurtured and demonstrated again and again. Rashid continued his life, going to work, helping his family, and quietly observing the world around him. He began to notice small opportunities to help others. A neighbor struggling with groceries, a stray dog caught in a fence, an elderly man needing guidance across the street. Each small act reminded him of the boy in the drain, and he felt a growing desire to make a difference, to rise to challenges rather than avoid them. One afternoon, Rashid met an old friend, Samir, at the local tea stall. They spoke about life, dreams, and fears. Samir noticed a change in Rashid's demeanor. "You seem different," Samir said. "Braver somehow." Rashid smiled quietly. He didn't yet know the full extent of the challenges he would face, but he sensed that something within him had awakened. A quiet courage that would guide him when life demanded more than routine, when the ordinary would be replaced by extraordinary tests. By the end of the week, Rashid had begun to feel a subtle transformation. He walked taller, spoke with more confidence, and even smiled more easily. The small act of courage had ignited something within him, a spark that hinted at the hero he could become. Yet he remained humble, aware that life's greatest challenges were still ahead. He had only glimpsed the beginning of a journey that would test him physically, emotionally, and morally. Evening fell over the town, casting long shadows across the streets. Rashid sat on the rooftop of his house, watching the sky turn shades of pink and orange. The sounds of the town, the laughter of children, the distant chatter of neighbors, the soft rustling of leaves created a sense of serenity. Yet beneath this calm, Rashid felt a quiet anticipation. Life had shown him a glimpse of courage, but he knew that the real trials, the moments that would define his character, were yet to come. As stars began to appear in the sky, Rashid whispered to himself, almost as a promise, "I will be ready for whatever comes next." And in that quiet moment, a seed was planted. A seed of courage, hope, and resilience that would grow stronger with every challenge life presented. The ordinary life he had always known was about to change forever, and Rashid would face it with a newfound strength that he had only begun to understand. Little did he know, the coming days would test not just his bravery, but his faith in himself, his love for his family, and his ability to rise when life demanded courage the most. But for now, the world seemed calm, the night peaceful, and Rashid ready, even if unknowingly, for the journey that lay ahead. The next morning began like any other for Rashid. The sun rose slowly over the small town, spilling golden light across the rooftops and streets. Birds chirped happily, and the scent of fresh bread drifted from the bakery near his home. Rashid moved quietly through the house, careful not to wake his parents. He smiled as he saw Armin, his younger brother, still asleep, curled up under his blanket. Armin was only 14, full of energy and curiosity, and he often looked up to Rashid as a guide and protector. Rashid loved his brother deeply, even if he sometimes struggled to understand the boy's sudden bursts of excitement and impulsive ideas. Rashid ate a simple breakfast of bread, eggs, and tea while thinking about his plans for the day. He had planned to go to the shop, help his father with some carpentry work, and later spend time teaching Armin some basic skills he had learned over the years. It was an ordinary day, ordinary in every way, but Rashid didn't yet know that life had a surprise waiting, one that would shake the calm foundations of his world. Later in the morning, Rashid received a phone call from Armin's school. The voice on the other side sounded serious, even worried. "Is this Rashid?" the teacher asked. "There's been an accident involving Armin. You need to come immediately." Rashid's heart stopped. His hand shook as he gripped the phone. "What happened?" Is he okay?" he asked, his voice tight with panic. "We don't know yet. Please come quickly," the teacher replied before ending the call. Rashid didn't wait for another moment. He ran out of the house, jumping over small puddles on the street, shouting for a passing rickshaw. His mind raced. What kind of accident could have happened to Armin? How serious was it? He felt fear gripping him, a fear so intense that his chest tightened and his thoughts scattered. The rickshaw driver noticed Rashid's urgency and sped through the narrow streets, dodging pedestrians and carts with surprising skill. Rashid clutched his seat, feeling both desperate and helpless. Every second that passed seemed like an eternity. His mind flashed with memories of Armin, his laughter, his mischievous pranks, the way he always ran to Rashid when scared. Rashid felt an overwhelming surge of love and worry. He promised himself that no matter what, he would not let anything happen to his brother. When they arrived at the school, a small crowd had gathered outside the main gate. Teachers and students were talking quietly among themselves, but the anxious expressions on their faces said everything Rashid needed to know. Without a word, he pushed past them and ran toward the school's courtyard, where he saw Armin lying on the ground. Armin had fallen from the school terrace while trying to retrieve a ball that had rolled over the edge. His leg was twisted in an unnatural angle, and there were cuts and bruises across his arms and face. Rashid's heart pounded violently. He dropped to his knees beside his brother, trying to calm himself while assessing the situation. "Armin, it's okay, I'm here," he whispered, even though his own voice trembled with fear. The school staff had already called an ambulance, but it would take time to arrive. Rashid realized that he had no choice. He had to act quickly if he wanted to help his brother. He remembered first aid techniques he had learned years ago and carefully examined Armin for other injuries. The boy groaned in pain, but his eyes opened, filled with fear and confusion. "Rashid, it hurts," Armin whispered. Rashid felt a wave of helplessness. He was afraid of making things worse. Every movement carried a risk, but he knew that waiting passively was not an option. Taking a deep breath, Rashid gently stabilized Armin's leg with his hands, trying to prevent further injury. Sweat ran down his face, but he focused all his energy on staying calm and keeping Armin reassured. Minutes passed like hours. Rashid whispered to Armin, telling him stories, reminding him of their favorite memories, and promising that everything would be okay. Despite his own fear, he knew he had to be strong for his brother. Every sound of an approaching siren made him hope the ambulance would arrive soon. Finally, the ambulance appeared, weaving through the crowded streets. Paramedics jumped out, and Rashid explained what had happened. They carefully lifted Armin onto a stretcher and rushed him into the vehicle. Rashid climbed in beside his brother, holding his hand and refusing to let go. The ride to the hospital was tense, with Rashid constantly checking Armin's condition, speaking softly to keep him calm. At the hospital, doctors and nurses moved quickly. Rashid stayed close to Armin, watching as they examined his injuries. Armin needed surgery for his leg, and there were concerns about internal injuries as well. Rashid's stomach tightened with fear. The thought of losing his brother, even for a moment, was unbearable. He paced the waiting area, replaying every moment in his mind, wondering if he could have prevented the accident, questioning every decision he had made. Hours passed. The surgery took longer than expected, and Rashid felt the weight of exhaustion and anxiety pressing down on him. He had not eaten, barely slept, and every phone call from the hospital staff made his heart leap. Yet through all the fear and uncertainty, Rashid never left Armin's side. He knew that his presence was important, that his calmness could help his brother even when he couldn't speak or fully understand what was happening. Finally, the doctor came out to speak with Rashid. "The surgery was successful," the doctor said, giving a reassuring smile. "Armin is stable. He will need time to recover, but he's going to be okay." Rashid felt a wave of relief crash over him. He sank into a chair, tears streaming down his face. For the first time since the accident, he allowed himself to breathe. He thought about the moments of fear, the panic, the feeling of helplessness, and realized that he had faced a test of courage he had never imagined. The days that followed were filled with hospital visits, bandage changes, and monitoring Armin's recovery. Rashid stayed awake most nights, sitting beside his brother's bed, ensuring that he was comfortable, feeding him, and telling him stories to keep his spirits up. He saw how fragile life could be and how quickly it could change. During this time, Rashid also faced the reactions of others. Some neighbors and friends praised him for his bravery, saying he had acted like a true hero. But Rashid didn't feel like a hero. He felt guilty for not preventing the accident, for not being there to protect Armin from harm. He struggled with the idea that courage wasn't just about acting. It was also about responsibility, foresight, and vigilance. Despite the fear, guilt, and exhaustion, Rashid's love for his brother never wavered. He realized that true courage was not a single act. It was a commitment to stay, to support, and to care even when life seemed overwhelming. Every smile from Armin, every small word of gratitude, reminded Rashid why he had faced his fears. Rashid also learned that courage sometimes meant asking for help. He reached out to relatives and friends, accepting their support with humility. Together, they created a network of care for Armin, showing Rashid that bravery wasn't about facing challenges alone, but about knowing when to lean on others while still taking responsibility. As Armin slowly recovered, Rashid reflected on the experience. He understood that life could change in an instant, that ordinary days could become extraordinary tests of character, and that fear was not the opposite of courage, but a part of it. Courage was about acting despite fear, about rising when life demanded it, and about protecting those you love even when the path was uncertain. The accident also brought the brothers closer. Armin looked up to Rashid with admiration, understanding the depth of his brother's love and bravery. Rashid, in turn, recognized the strength in Armin's resilience, the courage in facing pain and fear, and the bond that kept them both grounded. Together, they had survived a moment that could have changed everything, and in doing so, they discovered a deeper connection and understanding. Rashid's daily life slowly returned to routine, but the lessons of the accident stayed with him. He became more attentive, more patient, and more willing to step forward when others needed help. The fear he once felt did not disappear. It transformed into awareness, vigilance, and readiness to act. He realized that life would continue to present challenges, and courage was a muscle that had to be exercised regularly. One evening, as Rashid sat by Armin's bedside, he whispered quietly, "We survived this, brother. And we will face whatever comes next together." Armin smiled weakly, holding his brother's hand. In that small, quiet moment, Rashid felt a profound sense of purpose. He understood that bravery was not about recognition or praise, but about being present, about choosing action when it mattered most, and about rising to challenges even when fear threatened to hold you back. The accident had changed Rashid forever. It had shown him that courage was not abstract or distant. It was real, immediate, and deeply connected to love and responsibility. It had taught him that redemption was not about correcting past mistakes, but about facing the present with honesty, commitment, and a willingness to act. Rashid knew that more challenges would come, that life would continue to test him in unexpected ways, but he felt a quiet confidence that he could rise, that he could act, and that he could protect those he loved no matter what. And so the small town continued its quiet rhythm, unaware of the extraordinary courage that had emerged within one of its residents. Rashid had faced a test that would shape his character, his future, and his understanding of what it truly meant to be brave. The ordinary days he had once cherished were now intertwined with lessons of fear, action, and love, a combination that would guide him through the challenges yet to come. Rashid returned home after weeks at the hospital, exhausted yet relieved. Armin's leg was healing, and the doctors were confident he would walk again without problems. But despite the relief, Rashid carried a new kind of weight on his shoulders, a weight heavier than any physical burden he had ever lifted. He had acted courageously when his brother was in danger, yet he felt guilty. Guilt for not preventing the accident, guilt for the hours of fear, and guilt for the small, quiet ways he had failed to protect his family from pain. At home, his parents greeted him warmly, relieved to have him back. His father, a quiet man of few words, gave him a firm pat on the shoulder while his mother hugged him tightly, tears in her eyes. "You did everything you could, Rashid," she said softly. "We are proud of you." Rashid nodded, but the words did little to ease the thoughts that crowded his mind. Every night, he replayed the accident in his head, imagining different ways he could have acted faster, predicted better, or prevented the fall entirely. He realized that courage alone wasn't enough. It needed wisdom, preparation, and foresight. The people in the town began to notice Rashid in a new light. Children whispered excitedly about the hero who saved his brother, and neighbors greeted him with admiration. Some friends called him brave, others simply shook their heads in respect. Rashid appreciated the kind words, but he also felt an invisible pressure. Being seen as courageous came with expectations. He worried about the next time life would demand action, and whether he would be ready. In the days that followed, Rashid tried to return to normal life, but normal felt different now. Every small danger seemed larger, every unexpected sound more alarming, every decision heavier. When he walked down the street, he noticed hazards he had previously ignored: loose bricks on the pavement, low-hanging wires, children playing near dangerous corners. He could no longer look at the world without calculating risk and consequence. This awareness was exhausting. Rashid began to feel anxiety he had never experienced before. Nights became longer, filled with restless thoughts. Would Armin fall again? Could he prevent other accidents? Could he handle emergencies if they came when he least expected them? Fear gnawed at him, whispering doubts even as his mind tried to focus on hope and recovery. Yet, amid the struggle, Rashid also began to learn. He realized that courage was not a single act of heroism. It was a mindset, a practice, and a commitment to responsibility. He started small, helping neighbors with tasks, volunteering to assist in the local school, and supporting elderly residents who needed help carrying groceries or walking to appointments. Each small action reminded him of the strength he had discovered in himself, a strength that grew with every challenge faced. Rashid also sought knowledge. He enrolled in first aid and emergency response classes offered at the local community center. Each lesson was a step toward preparedness, a way to transform fear into action. He practiced bandaging, learned how to respond to injuries, and studied techniques for keeping calm in tense situations. For the first time in his life, he understood that courage alone was not enough. Skill and preparation were equally important. Even as Rashid worked to improve himself, he faced criticism and misunderstanding from some. Certain people in the town whispered that he had acted recklessly during Armin's accident, that he had risked his own life unnecessarily. Others questioned why he had not prevented the fall entirely. Rashid listened quietly, feeling the sting of judgment, but he also realized that redemption was not about pleasing everyone. It was about accepting responsibility, learning from mistakes, and taking deliberate action in the present. Armin, now recovering and walking with careful steps, became Rashid's source of inspiration. He saw his brother's determination to heal, to walk again despite the pain, and he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Armin's courage, quiet but strong, mirrored Rashid's own journey, teaching him that bravery could be expressed in many ways. It was not always about dramatic heroism. It could be patience, persistence, and the willingness to try again after failure. Rashid began to engage more with the community. He helped organize safety workshops for children, teaching them how to handle emergencies, stay calm, and ask for help when needed. He worked with local volunteers to clear hazards from streets and schoolyards, ensuring that accidents could be prevented in the future. Slowly, he noticed a change in himself. The anxiety and guilt that once overwhelmed him began to shift into determination and purpose. He was no longer paralyzed by fear. Instead, he felt empowered to act. One evening, Rashid met his friend Samir at the small tea stall near the market. They had known each other since childhood, but today their conversation was different. Rashid shared his fears, guilt, and the lessons he had learned. Samir listened quietly, nodding thoughtfully. "You've changed, Rashid," he said. "Not just because of what you did, but because of how you are handling it now. That's true courage." Rashid smiled faintly, appreciating the words but knowing that the journey was far from over. He still had moments of doubt, times when fear crept into his thoughts. But he also understood that courage was not about eliminating fear. It was about moving forward despite it. Every small act of help, every lesson learned, every step taken toward preparedness was part of his redemption. At home, Rashid spent evenings teaching Armin skills he had learned at the community center. They practiced basic first aid, emergency response, and even simple exercises to strengthen Armin's leg and balance. These sessions were not only practical, they were emotional healing for both brothers. Rashid felt his bond with Armin deepen, and he recognized that courage could also mean showing patience, compassion, and guidance in daily life. As weeks turned into months, Rashid's efforts began to transform his reputation in the town. People started coming to him for advice, help, and support. He became a quiet leader, someone others trusted and admired. But he remained humble, aware that the journey of courage and redemption was ongoing. Every day brought new lessons, new opportunities to act, and new challenges that could test his resolve. Rashid also began to reflect on his own inner growth. He realized that fear and guilt, while difficult, had been powerful teachers. They had pushed him to act, to learn, and to confront his limitations. He understood that redemption was not about erasing mistakes or avoiding failure. It was about facing them, learning from them, and using that knowledge to become stronger and more compassionate. One afternoon, while helping a neighbor fix a broken roof, Rashid paused and looked at the town below. Children played in the streets, elders went about their day, and the sun cast long shadows across the rooftops. Rashid felt a sense of calm satisfaction. He had faced one of life's harshest tests and had emerged not just physically unscathed, but mentally and emotionally stronger. He had learned that courage and redemption were not distant ideals. They were choices made every day, in moments large and small. Rashid's parents noticed the change in him as well. His father saw the careful thought in his son's actions, the quiet confidence in his movements, and the wisdom in his decisions. His mother noticed the patience, empathy, and kindness that had deepened in Rashid's heart. They both felt pride, not just for what he had done during the accident, but for the man he was becoming, a man of courage, humility, and integrity. Even Armin, now stronger and more confident, inspired Rashid. Watching his brother play carefully, laugh freely, and take small risks without fear reminded Rashid of the value of resilience. It was a two-way journey. As Rashid helped Armin heal, Armin helped Rashid understand the power of patience, love, and consistent effort. Rashid also faced moments of temptation and doubt. Some days, fear would return in the quietest moments, a loud noise, an unexpected incident, or a minor accident nearby. Each time, Rashid remembered what he had learned. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. He reminded himself of the lessons from the hospital, the community center, and the daily efforts to improve his skills. These reminders helped him stay grounded, balanced, and ready. By the end of the year, Rashid had grown into a person who balanced courage with wisdom, action with reflection, and love with responsibility. The accident with Armin had changed his life forever, but it had also given him the gift of self-awareness, empathy, and purpose. Rashid understood that his journey was not just about protecting his brother or helping his town. It was about the continuous practice of courage, the daily effort to make choices that aligned with integrity, and the willingness to face fear with action. He had learned that redemption was not a single moment, but a series of moments, each shaped by intention, effort, and love. Every step he took toward helping others, every lesson he shared, and every act of bravery, big or small, was a part of that journey. Rashid realized that he could not control every outcome, prevent every accident, or erase every mistake. But he could control how he responded, how he learned, and how he grew. And so, Rashid moved forward, carrying the lessons of fear, courage, and redemption in his heart. He understood that life would continue to present challenges, but he also knew that he had discovered a strength within himself that could not be taken away. Every act of courage, every moment of patience, and every choice to act with love and responsibility was a step toward becoming the person he aspired to be, a person capable of facing life's tests with humility, bravery, and an unwavering commitment to those he loved. Past and life had slowly returned to a sense of normalcy, though normal now felt different. Rashid had changed in ways that were not visible at first glance. He walked with more confidence, spoke with more thought, and approached each day with a quiet determination. He had discovered that courage was not just a single act in a moment of panic, but a lifelong commitment to responsibility, awareness, and love. Armin had fully recovered and now walked and ran with the same energy he had before the accident. Rashid watched his younger brother play in the courtyard, laughing freely with his friends. The boy's smile, so full of innocence and joy, reminded Rashid of everything he had fought for, not only during the accident, but in every small decision he had made since then. Every step of Armin's recovery symbolized a victory for Rashid as well, a reward for the courage he had found within himself. The town had also changed in subtle ways. People spoke more openly about helping one another, and small acts of kindness became more common. Rashid noticed children offering to assist the elderly, neighbors checking in on each other, and local shopkeepers working together to keep the streets safe. Rashid felt proud, not of himself alone, but of the ripple effect that courage and action could have on a community. He realized that true heroism was not always about dramatic rescues or public recognition. It was about inspiring others to act, to care, and to make a difference in small, consistent ways. One afternoon, while walking through the town square, Rashid noticed a young boy trapped in a tree. The boy had climbed too high, attempting to retrieve a stray kite, and now could not descend safely. A small crowd had gathered, unsure of how to help. Rashid felt a familiar surge of fear, but this time it was tempered by confidence. He quickly assessed the situation, speaking calmly to the boy, giving him instructions, and reassuring him that he would be okay. Without hesitation, Rashid climbed the tree, carefully reaching the boy and supporting him as they descended together. The crowd cheered, but Rashid paid little attention to the applause. What mattered was the boy's safety and the lesson he could learn from staying calm and following guidance in moments of fear. The boy's parents hugged him tightly, and Rashid felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. This was the essence of courage, not seeking recognition, but acting when it mattered most, even in small moments. That evening, Rashid returned home and sat on the rooftop, watching the sunset paint the sky with shades of gold and pink. Armin joined him, carrying a small notebook. "Rashid, I've been writing about everything you taught me," Armin said shyly. "About courage, responsibility, and never giving up. I want to help others like you helped me." Rashid smiled, feeling a deep sense of pride and love. He realized that his journey had not only transformed him, but also shaped the next generation of courage in his town. Rashid reflected on the past months. He remembered the panic, fear, and guilt he had felt during Armin's accident. He remembered the restless nights, the anxiety, and the doubt that had haunted him. Yet he also remembered the lessons learned, the strength discovered, and the small victories that built resilience. He understood now that courage was not the absence of fear. It was the ability to act despite fear, to rise when life demanded it, and to commit to growth and responsibility every day. The next morning brought another test, though this one was less dramatic but equally important. A fire had broken out in a small workshop at the edge of the town. Thick smoke rose into the sky, and people ran in panic, unsure of how to contain the flames. Rashid was nearby and rushed toward the scene, assessing the danger. He saw a group of workers trapped inside, coughing and unable to find the exit. His heart pounded, but he remembered the lessons of preparation, calmness, and action. Rashid quickly organized a plan. He guided the workers toward safe exits, using wet cloths to cover their mouths and directing them away from the smoke. One worker panicked and froze, but Rashid stayed calm, spoke softly, and gently guided him to safety. Minutes later, everyone was out of the building, and the fire brigade arrived to control the flames. Rashid's actions had prevented injuries and ensured that no one was harmed. As the crowd dispersed, Rashid stood quietly, watching the firefighters work. He did not seek praise, though many thanked him. Instead, he thought about the responsibility that came with courage, the awareness that life could change in an instant, that people relied on him, and that preparation, calm thinking, and decisive action could save lives. He realized that these experiences had transformed him from a boy who once doubted himself into a man capable of facing challenges with clarity and heart. At home, Rashid shared the story of the fire with his parents and Armin. His father nodded silently, proud of the son who had grown into a man of courage and integrity. His mother hugged him tightly, whispering, "You have become more than we ever imagined." Rashid smiled but felt humble, knowing that his journey was ongoing. Courage, he realized, was not a destination. It was a lifelong path, filled with continuous learning, reflection, and action. In the weeks that followed, Rashid became a mentor to others. Children sought his advice, Teenagers came to learn from his experiences, and even adults looked up to him for guidance. He taught not only first aid and emergency response, but also lessons of responsibility, patience, and moral courage. He emphasized that mistakes were not failures. They were opportunities to grow, learn, and become stronger. One afternoon, Rashid visited the school where Armin had the accident months ago. He spoke to the students about courage, safety, and the importance of helping others. He shared his own story not to boast but to inspire reflection. "Courage," he said, "is not about never being afraid, it is about acting when fear is there. It is about helping others, learning from mistakes, and never giving up." The students listened attentively, some taking notes, others asking questions. Rashid felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The lessons he had learned were now being passed on, creating a chain of courage and responsibility that could influence the town for years to come. As the year drew to a close, Rashid often reflected on how far he had come. He remembered the ordinary days when he feared failure, the panic of the accident, the long nights at the hospital, and the struggles with guilt and self-doubt. He saw how each of those moments had shaped him, strengthened him, and guided him toward growth. He understood now that true courage was not heroic gestures alone. It was the accumulation of small choices, the quiet acts of responsibility, and the consistent effort to rise to life's challenges. One evening, Rashid walked through the town square and noticed children playing near the same streets where he had once noticed dangers. He smiled quietly, realizing how much had changed. People were more cautious, more aware, yet more willing to help each other. The lessons of courage, responsibility, and redemption had spread, creating a community that valued action, empathy, and vigilance. Rashid felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that he had contributed to that change. As night fell, Rashid sat on the rooftop again, looking at the stars. Armin joined him, holding a small journal filled with notes, sketches, and reflections. "Rashid," Armin said softly, "I want to be brave like you. I want to help people just like you taught me." Rashid hugged his brother tightly. "You already are brave, Armin," he replied. "Courage is in every choice we make, every act of kindness, and every time we rise despite fear. You will find your own path, and it will be wonderful." Rashid realized that his journey was now full circle. He had faced fear, acted with courage, and found redemption, not through recognition, but through love, responsibility, and growth. He had learned that life's challenges could test anyone, but it was how one responded that defined a person. Courage was not about being fearless. It was about rising when life demanded it most, about protecting those you love, and about using experiences, good or bad, to grow stronger and wiser. In the quiet of the night, Rashid made a promise to himself. He would continue to act with courage, to help others whenever possible, and to teach the lessons he had learned. He knew that life would continue to present challenges, that fear would return, and that mistakes might happen. But he also knew that he had discovered a strength within himself that could face any trial. He had learned the true meaning of courage, responsibility, and redemption. And so Rashid's story did not end with a single act of bravery, but with a lifetime of purpose. He had become a symbol of quiet heroism, not for fame or recognition, but for the way he lived every day, with courage in action, love in his heart, and wisdom guiding his steps. His journey showed that anyone could rise, anyone could change, and anyone could leave a lasting impact through consistent, thoughtful, and brave action. The town slept peacefully that night, unaware of the ordinary young man who had become extraordinary. Rashid looked at the stars one last time before closing his eyes. He had faced fear, embraced responsibility, and transformed challenges into lessons of life. Courage and redemption were no longer distant ideals. They were a living part of him, guiding his every step, shaping his every decision, and inspiring others to rise just as he had learned to rise.